This is an interview with Harold Herndon for the Great Mills Oral History Project, and it's December 19th, 2003. The interviewer is Meredith Taylor. We are interviewing in Mr. Herndon's office, his place of business, Compliance Corporation. And I already put the introduction on this.
Okay.
So I'm here talking with Mr. Harold Herndon, and what we'd like to hear from you is anything and everything you'd like to tell us about your experiences at Great Mills High School. And I can prompt you with specific questions, but I'm thinking that I'm interested in well, again, anything you want to tell us about your experience there, but I'm also interested particularly in the relationships between teachers, the relationships between teachers and students, and teachers and administrators, because you can talk to us as a teacher, as a former teacher, and we haven't talked to very many former teachers, so that would be most helpful. But you know, as a community member, I mean, there may be just other comparing it to the other schools where you taught, and any of those things. So could you start by just telling us your name? Just, I know where it is, but for the record, so we can quote you, and what brought you to Great Mills High School, and when were you there?
Okay, well, my name is Harold Herndon. I came to St. Mary's County in 1960, and I came here. There were instrumental music program. I think it had existed at Great Mills for 1 year, but there was no instrumental music program in the county. And I think, as I said before, there was a gentleman named Miller, I can't think of his first name now, who was a band teacher at Great Mills High School. And I was hired to be the band teacher at George Washington Carver, which was the black school at that time. And I got here a year after he did. So we both worked on, developing a instrumental music program in the county for until such time as the desegregation took place. And that was, I think, 60, 66, 65, 66, somewhere around there. I'm not sure exactly. And at that point, the Great Mills High School, the students who were high school students at George Washington Carver went to Great Mills because that became the high school. And then Carver became what was called a middle school. As I continued to be, my main stay was at Carver. However, when the desegregation took place, Mr. Miller did not stay at Great Mills, and so Great Mills was without a band instructor for that first year. So I was tasked with, along with doing what I was doing at Carver, to go to Great Mills. I've forgotten the schedule.
So you retained your position at Carver when you went to Great Mills?
Yes. That was the way I was tasked. I continued to work with instrumental music at Carver, and then for that year, I was the band teacher at Great Mills High School, which meant all of the things that band teachers are supposed to do in terms of preparing kids to teach them to prepare for concerts, to football, to cheering, all of that stuff that I had to do. But as I said, I was only there for a year, so some of the things that you mentioned to me are very difficult for me to talk about, because when I was at Great Mills, there wasn't any time to socialize with any of the teachers. It was time to do what I could, not all that I was capable of doing, but what I could in terms of the time I had with the kids, and that's what I did. Some of the children who were in the Great Mills band were some of the children I had previously taught at Carver when they're at the high school, and the kids, the band group, that all worked out quite well. I never had any problems with the children in terms of the mixing of the children. I never had any problems with it. I mean, we were all there for a purpose, and we did as much as we could. I wasn't able to give them as much as I could have given them because of the time factor, but we did what we could with the time we had, and we were able to at least make sure that they had the concerts as they were used to having, and the football team, the halftime shows and the parades. And
So you got them out on the field and marching and all that?
Yep,
Yeah.
I did that and participated in the parades, and then the contest where they would go away to play to get graded, and so I did all of that for them and for the Carver group, which was the middle school at that time.
So the white kids in the band, would you say were welcoming to the black students coming from Carver?
Well,
Or-
it appeared that way. No, I had no problems. I had a jazz band too, by the way, along
Okay.
with all the other stuff. But I had, like I said, I did not sense any tension in that
In that group?
the setting that I was involved in anyway.
Did you sense that in around? Were you aware of any tensions outside the band? I mean, you said you weren't there much, but were you aware of any at any time? Did the students reflect any problems they were having outside of band, or any of the students, or were you aware of any problems?
I really wasn't aware of any.
Okay.
It appeared to me that I would say at least the majority. You never can speak to all, but at least the majority of the students were able to accept that desegregation process and go from where they were to. Obviously, there were some changes. Most notable changes, I guess, is that for the different kind of student organizations, most of the leadership was of the Caucasian folks. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's because the change geographically, or since the kids were moving from Carver to Great Mills, that was it. I think as the years went on, of course, some of that obviously changed. And then, the kids the students at Carver were all used to being in those leadership roles. You were the president
Right.
of this organization or the student council or whatever, and now you're not. So that was that. I think that might have been a little difficult for some of them because.
Do you think that was basically you're talking about elected roles, that they had already maybe had elections, and or are you talking about leadership beyond elected roles?
Well, I'm talking about a combination of both, mostly
Okay.
elected. I mean, those children who had been in leadership positions at Carver, obviously, after being in that environment for a while, those leadership qualities, blossomed, and they
Right.
became part of the leadership structure at Great Mills. It's very difficult for me to talk a lot about the how the evolution of the process at Great Mills since I was not there. Some of the teachers who were transferred from one school to the other, there were a few, not a lot of them, but I guess I don't know how well some of those people made that transition. I'm going to have to say this. As a result of the desegregation process, there was a difference in terms of the control of discipline, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own thoughts about all of that, how
Mm-hmm.
it happened, what happened, or why I should have, but I don't know. I just know that I know that there was a certain what you might say, a certain competitiveness that existed. But an example is, for instance, while and let me clear this. I am not advocating segregation. I think desegregation is integration will be fantastic, but we're not there yet. But we're getting there, I hope. Anyway, there was a certain pride, I guess you might say, in those students at Carver who were able to take not substandard teachers, because the teachers had a commitment that I wish all educators had now to teaching, really teaching kids. But there was a certain pride that they had in being exceptional in terms of performance. Okay, and I'm not necessarily talking about band at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but being exceptional in terms of performance, when the fact that some of the materials especially were substandard. So you took things that were, I guess, a little substandard, and you were able to take that and compete and excel against some folks, at least in perception-wise, had things that were of a much better quality than of yours, what you had. And all that wasn't perception, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to that business about separate but equal, and that's never been the case. But so there was something there, I think, to drive people to I want to make sure that everybody knows I can do this thing as well as anybody else, if not better. That's just something that I noticed in terms of. Excuse me.
Well, I had two questions about that. One of them is I am interested in hearing about specifically any differences in terms of facilities and materials and so forth. But also, you started off by talking about differences in discipline with that. When you were talking about the competition, were you going to say more about that? Or
Well,
so what happened to that feeling of I'm going to excel, not I'm going to, as we said in the exhibit, strive not to equal but to excel. Kind of, it sounds like what you're talking about a little bit. What happened to that competitive edge? Are you saying something happened to that changed, or?
Well, I think to a certain extent, it didn't change in those individuals who had spent their many years, but as things, I think that competitive, there's no reason to compete. Now we're all part of the same group, so to speak, if that makes any sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not a bad thing. It was not a bad thing that everybody's part of the same group. I'm just saying that the comp- the reason, the competitive reason, disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have two teams anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't. Since we're one team, we don't compete against each other, but we try to compete against, well, find some other group to compete against, so to speak. The remark I made about discipline, I recall having been in the high school, and how that it used to be, uh, you know, I was a very young teacher, but I was a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and there I had students in my class who were, if not as old, very close to being as old as I was, but I was a teacher, and there was a certain amount of respect that came with being a teacher. That, for instance, if I had a problem with a student, I'd call their parents, and I didn't have to go through a whole process of justifying having called, and what I said didn't get scrutinized. That, who's telling the truth here. I didn't have to go to get into a discussion about whether the student was correct or I was correct. And that's not to mean that every time somebody, our teacher said something, that was taken, without any, I guess, questions as to whether or not it was truth or it was correct or whatever. But it helped in terms of the discipline that was required to establish the order needed in order for you to be effective in your classroom. I mean, if you got to spend half your time or more trying to deal with inappropriate behavior, you can't get your job done. So we didn't have that as a problem. Did we have students who sometimes disobeyed, or broke the rules? The answer is yes. None like what goes on now, but I couldn't survive in that environment. Now I know I couldn't. And nobody. I've never imagined a student who would dare say some of the things to some of the teachers, any teacher then, that that they say, don't even think about it now. So I think that there were some things that, and I'm not necessarily advocating corporal punishment necessarily, but there were some cooperations that took place between the parents and the students. The parents and the teachers also. That there's some of it now, but not nearly as much as it should be. I can say that when I went to Great Mills, with the parents I had to interface with there, who were part of the, of the Great Mill, the band boosters kind of thing. That kind of interest in students and respect and all the other things continued. So it didn't just stop when desegregation took place. Of course, over the years, a lot of things have changed. So that's kind of where I was going with that. The discipline part of what I was talking about.
That's very helpful. What about? Can you contrast in any specific way what you had at Carver versus Great Mills in terms of just material things, physical plant, any of those things? You had said, well, there was never separate but equal, never really worked. Was there anything you would contrast?
Well, for instance, I'll speak specific to the band. To get the band program started off, the parents had to either have all the instruments or buy instruments. Many of the kids would show up with instruments that their parents had had from wherever they might have come. Nobody was here, of course, no native people, because they didn't have any. There was no instrumental music in the public school system.
Yeah.
So consequently, only people who had previously been someplace else and belonged to a band or something had it. So we had, instruments, brass in particular, with holes in them that they leaked. The things with pads in them, the pads were all dry. So along with teaching, I had to learn how to repair.
Uh-huh.
And also, in terms of the budgeting process to get music for the kids, kind of tough. Didn't have to go out there. Got some help from the board, but not a lot. Instruments that normally parents would not buy. It took us a while to get them, and we got usually the quality of what we got was not good as compared to what Great Mills got, I should say. And I speak in terms of Great Mills specifically because that was the closest one. I mean, there were two other schools on the other end, Banneker and I guess it was in Chopticon. First Margaret Brent, I guess, wasn't it? Leonardtown had a high school, I think.
Chopticon
came in
built,
later.
Yeah, but before Leonardtown, though. Right? Chopticon was built before Leonardtown.
I'm not talking about Leonardtown High School now.
Okay.
Okay, that's a whole different story I can tell you about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
I can't remember when Chopticon.
It used to be, I think, if I remember correctly, the place that's in Leonardtown now, that's an elementary school, used to be the high school. Then they had Margaret Brent, I think. Margaret Brent might have been the high school.
Okay.
But the separation was that I know that Banneker was the high school on the north end of the county
there was just
for the
Banneker
blacks.
and Carver.
Yeah. And I think Margaret Brent was the other high school. So anyway, music hadn't gotten that far yet. It was down here that it started. But anyway, the quality of the instrument, what we would do, we were given a budget to purchase, instruments or music or whatever we felt like we needed. And of course, you did the best you could with what you had, which meant that sometimes you had to take substandard material in order to, for instance, an example is you would not expect students to buy tubas and French horns necessarily, and things that you need to have a band that people don't generally, or at least at that time they generally did not buy, and music, of course, and any other training materials that you thought you might need. So you had to stretch your money as far as you could, and that was sometimes
was there a difference in the budget then from Carver to Great Mills, as far as what the school gave you?
Well, let me say I never saw the budget figures, but based on the quality and quantity of the materials, that I'd have to assume that there was a difference.
Okay. That's something I'd really like more specific information on. So that's good to hear. I mean, this is very helpful because we really don't have very much information on the specific differences. I've been told that some of the schoolrooms were smaller. The space in the black schools was more of a problem, and that much like earlier times, the books still were, not new books. That there was a difference in the quality of the books. Which I'm very well informed comparatively about way back when.
Yes.
But this era of the early '60s, late '50s, I don't have much information. So.
Well, the only part I can talk about is those 5 or 6 years before the desegregation process took place.
Which is great, though, because we have very little information about that.
And so I do know that there was a difference in terms of the materials that were available to use. For instance, we had band. Our band room was the stage of
Mhm.
at the high school, which is, that was the band room, as opposed to a band room. Okay. Which required having to have a place to store, chairs, music stands. Every time you moved, you had to move all that stuff. Anyway, so that was different. It was definitely different there. We didn't focus on those differences, though. We focused on trying to get things done that we wanted to get done, and we had some successes with the students. I mean, for instance, I started. I have a picture that I cut out of the Enterprise years ago of Carver's band marching down Lexington Park, marching to Lexington Park,
to see that.
in which we won first place. For that, and of course the kids went to the different kinds of contests you have, where the kids go to play, to get graded, to see how well you've done, and all of that kind of stuff. It kind of amuses me now. For instance, I was at a program last week, in which they had this group of freshmen, freshmen and sophomores, I guess, for the string program in St. Mary's County. And I listened to people talking about intonation. I'm saying, man, they should have been here when I got here. Intonation. I was just happy to hear somebody make a reasonable sound, let alone worry about whether it was in tune or not, But it really, 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 it just pleases me to see how far this county has come. I mean, you were talking about kids sitting up playing string instruments, and they sounded decent. And from the drum and bugle corps days, when nobody read a note of music, they just made it up as they went. Kind of thing.
When did you have the drum and bugle corps?
I never had a drum and bugle corps.
Okay.
That drum and bugle corps existed. That was what existed, and they were basically in the parochial schools.
Okay.
And the parochial schools, and of course the kids. And then we had the experience of getting band uniforms for the kids. In fact, in that exhibit,
yeah, I was going to say we had that.
That's a band uniform.
That was one of my favorite things.
That was a Carver band uniform.
Yeah.
And see, the parents and the kids sold candy and combs and all kinds of things to raise the money to buy those uniforms. Mr. Lancaster was the principal guy there, John Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
He was the principal guy in terms of that group of parents to raise money to buy those uniforms for those kids.
And his daughter was
his daughter and his son. Were both part of the band. But as I said, Janice was in the band. Francine Dove Hawkins, Steve. I mean, I just go on. Oh, the other guy, Tubby.
Mm-hmm. Tubby Smith.
Tubby Smith was in the band, and just a lot of folks.
Impressive alumni.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's I don't know. I'm just
It's great.
rattling on here.
Wonderful. So you had a band and a jazz band, but not an orchestra, right?
No,
And, yeah.
no, on string instruments. Anybody saw with guitars, maybe. Yeah. But no orchestra.
You had the jazz band at Carver too, and then at Great Mills?
We had a jazz band at Carver and at Great Mills. Of course, when the Carver became a middle school, so to speak, well, they couldn't have a jazz band because the kids had not developed. And by the way, while I was doing all of this, I also got to go around to all of the different elementary, not all of them, but many of the elementary schools in the county to start kids in the early grades.
Lessons or meeting as a band or
trying to meet as a band. It was lessons basically. It was trying to, kids whose parents wanted them to learn how to play instruments. I'd go sometimes a couple times a week or whatever time I could work out to get there, and meet with the kids and teach them how to play the instruments, and then there was kids who would keep eventually end up in the middle school and in high school, etc. But anyway.
So what happened after that year then? Did you changed schools? Did you?
Well, that's an interesting story.
Well, I'd love to hear it.
Because
it's interesting.
I guess when the band teacher at Great Mills left, and they asked me to come over there because they didn't have anybody to. Well, my assumption was, since I had been the band teacher at Carver at the high school, and they asked me to come over there, that they would be asking me maybe if I would be full-time at Great Mills.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that didn't happen. I found out along about the end of the year, next school year, that they'd hired a band teacher.
And that you hadn't even
Nobody
been invited to apply.
Nobody bothered to ask me whether I was interested or not. That bothered me. It really did. I'm happy now, because I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd probably be sitting somewhere as a retired band teacher. So I'm enjoying what I've done. Anyway, but the guy that they got, Larry Brown is his name. Larry's still around. We've been friends for a long time and worked together. He had no idea, I guess, about all of that. I didn't make no issue out of it. I just went on and did what I felt like I needed to do, and that's stay at Carver, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise in one sense, because as a result of staying there, I got met a guy named Ed Fitzgerald, who became the principal, and Ed Fitzgerald convinced me to get involved in administration, so I became an assistant principal, and anyway, some interest. That has nothing to do with what you're talking about now. Just to do with me.
No, well, that's fine. But, I heard that you taught at. Did you go to Esperanza at some point? Or were you an administrator there?
No, that's another story. But no, I was not at Esperanza. No, and I was not an administrator there.
Okay. Well, it was your son that was a source there.
Huh?
Well, it was your son that said that. Okay, when I called, I talked to
Okay.
your son once, and I said that we were doing this project, and I want to talk to you because you taught at Carver, and he said he never taught at Carver. So I said, well, my sources say that he did, and then he said, no, he taught at Esperanza.
No.
And anyway, I said, no, I really think he taught at Carver, and he said, well, I was young.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. He was.
But so, at some point though, you were also at Esperanza, but
I was never at Esperanza.
you were never.
Never there. No, but the schools I worked at, as I said, I worked at Carver. I worked at all of a lot of the elementary schools, especially these on the southern end of the county. When Carver went to Spring Ridge, that was a middle school. Carver became elementary. Spring Ridge was built, and that was the middle. They
Now,
became
do you
a
know
middle
when
school.
that happened? I mean, I can look it up. But was that a long time after? I mean, so you stayed, all right, after you left Great Mills, stopped teaching at Great Mills, you were teaching at Carver, and then how soon you stopped teaching band and became an administrator? Or
Well,
did
I was doing both
okay.
at Carver.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then I guess the Spring Ridge must have been built sometime in the when was it? In the late '60s, or I think, I
Or maybe
believe,
70s.
maybe late '60s, early '70s, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Anyway, we all the whole school just transitioned from Carver to Spring Ridge, and at that when the transition was made to Spring Ridge, I ended up being totally administration because they hired another person to do the band. And then while we was there for a number of years, because that was turned out that we're working on a new concept of open space, which we prepared well for that, and the team of people who moved were trained and could do it. For someone who had not had that training, it was impossible. I mean, you got four classes going on in a big open area, and if you didn't know what you were doing, it was, Anyway, it turned out, it started off as a very successful thing. And as I said, I was totally administration there. And then they built Leonardtown High School. And I got moved from Spring Ridge to Leonardtown High School.
To do?
To be assistant principal.
Assistant principal.
Yeah.
And what were you at Spring Ridge?
I was an assistant principal.
Assistant principal there, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And was that a choice of yours, or?
Choice of mine to what?
To move?
No.
Or, no, yeah.
No, that was not a choice of mine. But, it was the case you do what you're told, and that's what I did.
How did you feel about going from being working with music and the band to being an administrator?
Initially, I didn't particularly want to do it because I really enjoyed music. I still enjoy music, as far as that goes. But then I could see where I could probably touch and help more folks. I may not be able to help them to learn how to do music, but maybe I could help them to learn some other things that were as important, if not more important, than music. And so I guess my job satisfaction was being able to help folks, and a lot of different people. Most of the time, most of the students you had in band were not necessarily students who had some of the problems that some of the students had, and so I guess I got some personal satisfaction out of kind of helping some students through some of the problems that people have as they grow up. And then, of course, I aspired to be a principal. Initially, okay, I want to be a high school band director. Well, that ain't going to happen, or if it happens, it won't happen here anyway. Going from being a high school band director back to being a middle school band director. Anyway, so that's a whole lot of personal stuff that has no bearing on what you're trying to do. So I don't want to. Well, very little. At least I don't think. It is a reflection. It is a reflection of some of the issues that folks have dealt with, and maybe to a certain extent still have to deal with. The business about Esperanza, for instance. I had done what I needed to do, and I was qualified to be a principal, and I applied, and I got to run around, and of course somebody else ended up being the principal who was not as qualified as I was. When they got ready to open the new high school, I, of course, was interested in being the principal. Well, I couldn't get to be the principal, but they told me that the establishment said, you will go there. And I said, I'm not going. Well, yes, you are. You're going there as assistant principal. Okay? Of course, that bothered me too, So anyway, the only relevance that has is to kind of underscore some of the things I'm sure you've already heard from some other people about the way things were.
Were there any African American principals at the time that you applied at Esperanza, or when you moved to Leonardtown?
When the answer, what happened is all of those schools that were converted to elementary schools, and there was an African American principal from a high school, then they stayed there until they were gone. And then the answer is no, there were none. I remember that there was a a principal's job, Mechanicsville Elementary School, became available as a for a principalship, and I was encouraged to apply. Well, I was not elementary school trained, and I didn't see any sense in me getting involved in something where I was not only would I be destined to be for failure, but I would also be I just could not run that program. I did not know elementary education, so I didn't bother to participate. But at the time I was interested in the Esperanza job, there were no black high school administrators in St. Mary's County.
Actually,
I don't think there has been since then. Not a lot, but there has been. I think there was one at Great Mills for a while, I believe.
before Linda Limas.
Yes, I believe. I can't think of the young lady's name now, but there weren't any.
Mm-hmm.
And when Leonardtown High School opened, there were none. There may have been.
So they could have. I mean, that would have been an opportunity.
Well, I thought so.
Yeah.
And since I certainly knew what I was doing. But anyway, that's all. They all did me a favor, though.
Yeah.
Because it made me go do something that I probably wouldn't have even dreamed of doing.
Or maybe you took advantage and made it an opportunity.
Well, one way or the other.
So is that when did you retire early then and start a business?
I retired a little bit. I was almost 20 years in education, almost within a few months. Actually, I started in 1980. Started Compliance Corporation, and it was like about this time of year, I said I'm taking leave and I'm out of here and I'm gone and bye. Took a year's leave and I just didn't go back. And so that was in 1980, 79, 80, right there.
Okay, well, going back, obviously you didn't have much interaction with the other teachers at Great Mills because you were, right? You were in
That's
and out of
right.
there, you didn't really.
No.
But in the system in general or at Carver, were you aware of any concerns among teachers, I guess especially African-American teachers, but not necessarily just, about about losing jobs or about moving to positions that, were not what they wanted, or, was there a general concern in when they desegregated, and obviously people were going to be moved around a little bit, or were teachers concerned, and was anybody concerned about losing a job or anything like that?
I don't think there was a lot of concern about losing job. There was some concern about where they might get moved and what kinds of classes they'd have to teach. I know there was some concern about that. Some of the people were and the other business about how involved they would be in sponsoring some of the student activities, that kind of thing. How all of that played out at Great Mills, I really can't speak to because I don't know. Since I was, my time there was limited, I didn't have time to talk about whether somebody was happy or not with what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, maybe you can say something about this. If you, I've heard that. I don't know if this is just specifically Great Mills, but it was connected to Great Mills, that the credentials of the black teachers that came to Great Mills were better than a lot of the white teachers there. I don't know if it's just their credentials, but they were, better teachers for various reasons, and I assume it was their credentials as well. And that there was actually a program, money from the state, I think, to bring the white teachers up to the same level. Did you ever hear anything about that?
I did not. So I can speak only about those people that I had experiences with who were black, and I do know that they were qualified, very qualified, and as I said before, very dedicated. And I'm not going to try to say whether or not the teachers at Great Mills were not qualified or not dedicated. Of course, I don't know that.
Yeah, I just wondered if you'd heard about that issue. I heard that from someone who was on the faculty, a white person on the faculty at Great Mills, so that was very interesting. I'll ask him more about that too. Actually, I heard that from a couple of people.
That wouldn't surprise me if you think about what I mentioned about the principalship at Esperanza. Remember I mentioned about I applied and
Yeah,
certainly
you were very
more qualified than the person who got it, but
now
so it
I'm
doesn't surprise me.
interested that that you chose not to, I guess, do any kind of protest privately or publicly about when they hired the other band teacher at Great Mills, or about the Esperanza situation, the hiring there. Do you want to say anything about why you chose to not to pursue any kind of
Well,
action?
I did.
Or did
I
you?
did
Yeah.
complain. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't formally, do a formal protest or file any kind of a grievance or that kind of thing. But I did complain. I did complain because I thought it was unfair. I still think it's unfair as far as that goes. But
Certainly sounds like
Yeah.
it. Well, but you didn't pursue any kind of
no, I did not.
legal
No.
action.
Uh,
Do you want to say anything about why you didn't? You don't have.
well, I thought it was. I thought it was. It was a fruitless effort. It would be a waste of my energy at that time. I mean, things were completely a lot different than they are now. So it would have been a waste of my energy because the establishment was in charge, and so anyway.
Okay. Well, I hope that the students, through the people they've interviewed and some of the reading they've done, realize that there were things lost and things gained, and it wasn't all just gained anyway, in terms of this desegregation process for
Well,
anybody, students,
well-
teachers, the community at large.
Right, I think gained, of course, is what I'd like really to focus on, and gained is that the opportunities for people to understand how they needed to really relate with each other, are the opportunity for students who had previously had to make do with less than were able to get, and they got to experience some things that they probably would not have gotten to experience had it continued to be segregated, exposed to opportunities that would not have existed probably.
Can you think of any examples? Or?
Well, I guess for instance, some of the labs spaces were better, supplied. And the other thing, of course, is since we all live together, we all need to learn to live together. You can't learn to live together if you don't live together. And so, and I know that many of the folks during that time developed some lifelong, lasting friendships that crossed over all kinds of ethnic, religious boundaries. Previously, it didn't exist. For at least for most people here, there were other people who came to the county who had certain experiences. So I think those were some real pluses. The only the negative is I don't know that was the beginning of the decline of the discipline and the control of discipline, I should say, in the school system. As I said before, I have my own hypotheses, I should say, about not proven, of course, about some of the things that took place that might have caused caused the destruction, I guess, of and it's not so much as controlling people's minds as it is to uh, uh, acceptable behavior for an educational environment. Uh, some folks, I think, were allowed to get away with things they would normally not have gotten away with because teachers were a little bit reluctant to, exert themselves as they would probably have done otherwise.
Like, which teachers were? I mean, was there
Well,
a racial issue there, or
well,
or not?
I'm not sure. As I said, I mean, this is all just my thinking, and it's
I'd love to hear.
and my thinking, and it's nothing proven. But I felt like, for instance, that there's certain feelings where, I'll just spit it out.
Okay, great.
For instance, black teachers, I think, might have been a little reluctant to apply discipline to Caucasian, because that's back there. We're talking, and I think that maybe some of the same thing on the other side. As a result, behaviors that would previously have been unacceptable, probably in both environments, certainly in the black schools, didn't receive the attention that they needed. This is my perspective. Okay. Then you also probably end up you had the circumstances where some of those students who could be behavior problems were able to figure out, if they said certain things when they got home, okay, that all of a sudden the focus is changed from their behavior to who had the problem. They had the problem with. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope.
I think I do, but I don't know if everybody would. You could be more specific.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Okay,
this is after I'm at Carver, okay, and I had one day this guy comes in, takes his coat off, and announced that he's here to whip my, okay. Well, obviously I'm young and I'm not real in. Yes, it's a parent. Okay. Caucasian. Okay. As it turned out, his daughter had done something she shouldn't have done. And I'm assistant principal, so I prepared discipline. Discipline wasn't paddling. No. Well, no paddling involved. I don't even remember what it was that I did. It was something I did or caused her to do that I felt like would be correct her behavior, which of course didn't set too well with her. So she proceeded to go home and tell her dad whatever she told him, which obviously was not the truth. So he came prepared to beat me up. Okay. As it turned out, after he figured out that I was, number one, is I wasn't going to stand up and just take a beating, but maybe we ought to talk about what happened. Okay. And we did. We calmed down and we sat down and talked about what happened. Okay. And his daughter, of course, told him what she knew would get him excited, so that he would forget about what she had done. Well, it turned out that he and I got to be really good friends. Okay, and I knew, and she knew then, that all I had to do was call her dad if she was doing something she shouldn't have done, and that would be the end of it. I mean, as far as I was concerned, he'd take care of it. Yeah, but so there were instances where I'm sure that students both black and white, took advantage of the fact that they had been disciplined by someone who was different than they, and depending on the parent and what they had in their heads as to whether that was acceptable. If you remember, I told you where if I used to, at Carver, if I call a parent, students never wanted to call parents. Never. Do anything you want to do, but don't call my parent. So if you call a parent, there wasn't no question about whether or not what you're saying is truth. There wasn't no question about it. The question was not what you did about it, the teacher, but what am I going to do about it when the student gets home? Okay. Now I can't speak to that in terms of Great Mills because that was not. I have a feeling that they probably had some similar experiences in terms of being able to call parents, etc. But then when you got this mix, and people trying to figure out where do I fit in this scheme of things? What are my behaviors are acceptable? So that I don't get in trouble, so to speak. Not the kind of trouble you get in now with lawsuits and all that other stuff. But to make sure that situations like could have occurred had that guy not calmed down and we sat down and talked, that kind of thing.
That's very interesting. Did you ever have, since you were assistant principal for quite a while in different situations, did you ever have any other problems with white parents who, where that was kind of a issue maybe involved there?
I don't think not to that extent. No, not to that extent. And the thing is, that's still in the 60s when the discipline problems were minuscule as compared to the things that are going now. But so that was sort of an interesting experience, I should say.
I'll tell you about another sort of incident from another perspective, but we don't have to put it on tape. Is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to say about your experience with the desegregation process in the schools, or about Great Mills?
Well, I don't know. I think all in all, the desegregation process went rather smoothly. All in all, there were some problems, and there still are some problems, but they're not necessarily related to the desegregation. But I think all in all, it went rather smoothly. I don't recall any protests on one side or the other about that people just went about and did what they had to do and had dealt with their own whatever issues they had on a personal basis.
Were you aware of the fights and bomb threats and things at Great Mills?
Yes, I was aware of some of that. Yes, I was aware of some of that.
But that was relatively smooth as far as...
That's why I said relatively
okay.
Smooth. Okay, not completely, just relatively smooth.
What about, did you know anything about those? There were more public incidents, confrontive incidents in the early 70s at Great Mills, made the Enterprise, and where the NAAC got involved in like spring of 71. Were you aware of any of that?
I was aware of some of that, yes. Mainly because, I was just aware because it was the news. I was not involved in any way. And I don't know enough about that, whether it was. I would not attribute that to desegregation. That I would not. I know that there were issues that seemed to be between blacks and whites, but I don't know that enough about it to really to comment on that.
Okay. Well, I have one more question.
Yes.
This would be in the hypothetical realm as well, I'm sure. But
Hmm.
why do you think that the schools in St. Mary's County didn't desegregate until 1967, which was, 13 years after the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka?
Because they weren't made to do it. They were, at that point, that was it. They had no choice. And the leadership before then probably wasn't too interested in it, doing that. And the other part, of course, is I guess the local folks were not necessarily interested.
It's just sort of satisfied with the status quo, or?
Well, yeah. Well, some people were satisfied with the status quo. Most people were, what's wrong? It's not broke. We don't need to fix it, kind of thing. At least, and that's just my belief. I think that the Navy base had certainly had something to do with a change of mindset about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that became a very important part of the economy of the county. And it was kind of difficult to have a base located in a place where there was segregation for all kinds of reasons. So anyway, that would be my take on why.
Okay. And let's see, did you say what brought you here, why you came in 1960?
Why did I come?
Yeah, was that, yeah.
Well,
did you say why you came?
Yeah, well, I came here to start an instrumental music program,
right,
for a job, to teach.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I've said it all. I said it all. I don't know what you're going to find useful about what I said, but I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to vent.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that was certainly very, very controlled, refined venting.